Good afternoon. My name is Laurent Geeraerts. I'm a flight training instructor at Espace Drone and Noordzee Drones here in Belgium, and I'm going to give you the 10 tips for a safe flight. These are 10 basic tips, very easy things to remember, but quite important. Lots of people do not know that and are actually thinking that they are flying safe, but not really flying safe. The first tip is quite really obvious. That is, read the flight manual. Get to know your drone, get to know your specific device. There are lots of drones that have specific functions, that have specific possibilities, and it's actually the first thing that you have to do, and it's also so in the European regulation. Read the flight manual, get to know your drone. The second point, very easy, but not to forget, always work with a checklist. I have here a checklist. That is the checklist that we use here for the flight lessons. It's only 2 pages, and the point of a checklist is to be certain that you always do what you have to do in the correct following order. I have done lots of flights, I have done commercial flights, and I have done the mistake that everyone does. That is, my checklist is now optional because I know the checklist, I fly every day, and so I know how it works. And then at a certain moment I was doing a very big mission, I was doing 10 flights a day, so quite a heavy mission. And at a certain moment I was flying and I saw on the table the filter of my camera. And on my checklist there is a point that says check that the filter is cleaned and on the camera. And I have just said yes, okay, and it was actually not correct. Now, a filter of a camera, just land the system, place the filter, fly again. I lost maybe a few minutes, but it could also be something very critical for the safety, and have a checklist for the safety. That's really a basic thing. And the checklist doesn't have to be a super long checklist. If you have a checklist with 4 or 5 points that are necessary for the safety, just use that, but do use a checklist. And you can also use your own checklist. You do not have to use checklists that you take from internet. Just use your own checklist that corresponds to your device, to your mission, to your flights, but use a checklist. Third, always check the weather condition and know the limits of your device. I have here several devices. I have a DJI Mini 2, I have DJI M210. Of course, the M210 will be able to fly in much difficult weather environment than the Mini 2. But the Mini 2 will fly in other environments than another smaller or bigger drone. So just get to know your system and get to know what is the limit. The most important thing, wind speed. And many people think that the wind speed actually, that is, at a certain moment there will be too much wind and my drone will fall from the air. That is actually not the first problem with too much wind. What could happen is if there is wind above the limit of your aircraft, well, actually your aircraft will fly away, will be pushed by the wind, and it will not have power enough to come back. And then you are there and you're trying to fly back and you cannot, and what will you do? Well, you will have to land in a location that's not appropriate. So the wind is important. Can I fly in the rain, or is it a system that absolutely cannot get a drop of water? These are all things that you have to know, and it's always drone related. So not all drones have the same weather conditions. The fourth, watch out for the magnetic interference. And that is something that is not really well known, but there are lots of instruments in the drone that are actually using radio waves or electromagnetic waves. The compass of my drone, the GPS, so my navigation system, relies on electromagnetic information. And when there are interferences, and interferences can be local interferences from a power line, but it can also be a more global interference. The KP index is actually an indication of how much sun activity, a sunstorm is happening at the moment, and with a high sun activity there are problems with the magnetic field around the Earth. And actually there are lots of apps that you can use, and they are mostly called aurora borealis. These are actually the visible results of a high sun activity. These are the aurora borealis, and it can be a problem for your drone. I will just do a very small demonstration. I have here my compass, and I have here a magnet, and you can see immediately that when I put my compass near my magnet, well, my compass is actually becoming crazy, and I can just move it like that. Of course, there are not so many magnets when you are flying, but a high power line or any metal structures can actually be a problem for your compass. The fifth point, always check your device, and very important, control your propeller. So when you have a drone, just check it visually that everything is okay. It's very important to see that there are no broken parts, that everything is perfect, in perfect condition. Definitely do check the motors. Are they moving correctly? Nothing blocking. But very important also is to check your propellers. When I talk about the propellers, well, some propellers are very obviously not okay. But for some propellers, it's not that immediate. These are two propellers, and one of these two cannot be used. If you look very quickly, you might not see that, but when we zoom in, you will see the difference. So you can see this is a propeller that is not usable. This is a propeller that's perfectly usable. You really have to double check your propeller. Just control it, feel it. And here, when we look, maybe we do not see that it's not okay, but when we feel it, we directly feel that. Something that's also very important. Sometimes you have two propellers that are exactly the same visually. And when we zoom, we can see that visually. I actually do not see any difference. But when I do that, I take the two propellers and I will just move them a bit. Well, you can immediately see that one of those is much more flexible than the other. And these are two propellers for a Phantom 2. Only one is a flexible one and the other one is a hard one. And it's not a problem to fly with 4 flexible propellers. It's not a problem to fly with 4 hard propellers. It's well a problem when you mix them. These are both propellers that are okay for a Phantom 2. So it's a bit an old kind of propeller, but do not mix them. The only way to be certain that you have the right propellers is actually to check the part number. And on all the propellers, on all the parts, there is a small number. It's impossible to show that on the camera, but you can definitely see that if you look from very close, and the part number has to be the same. Here, these are 2 different part numbers. So check the propellers and make sure that you are using the right propellers of the exact same type. And not only they look like the same propeller, but they are exactly the same propellers. The next point, number 6, initialization. It is extremely important when you start your drone that you give it time to check every system, to check its position, to check its height reference, to check the horizontal, so IMU. The drone needs some time to be ready to fly safely. And the most recent drones, they will not allow you to start the motors when it's not ready. So you will try and start the motors and it will just say, sorry, I'm still warming up. So the modern drones will give no problem. But some drones, older ones or modern ones, but not that safe, they will give you the possibility to start the engine while the initialization is not ready yet. And then you will start with a drone that doesn't really know where it is, that doesn't really know how high it is flying, and more dangerous, possibly you will have a drone that will change its position during the flight, and it gives a fly away. That is, he thinks that he's starting at a position, and during the flight he will refine its position and actually realize that he's here. But between here and there, it might be a few meters, it might also be 20 kilometers. And then you see your drone flying away, and good luck to control it when it's flying very far. So initialization gives the drone the time to warm up, and the drone will let you know. It will say, the home point has been updated, please check it on the map. Or it will say GPS ready, or it will just give a few green flashes, but it will let you know that it's ready. Do not start when it's not ready. The 7th point, emergency procedures. Know what you have to do when something is going wrong or when you feel that something is about to go wrong. These are very basic things, but if we do a very easy test, I am flying with my drone and I am landing, and at the moment where I'm landing there is a kid running towards my drone. What do? That's an emergency. I need to be ready to know what I have to do. And when I teach future pilots, I do this test. And sometimes we discuss for 5 minutes. Should I stop the engine so that it's not dangerous anymore? Should I land as far as quickly as possible? Should I go high to be beyond reach of the kid? Well, actually, the best way to react is immediately go as high and as quickly in height as possible so that the kid cannot reach your drone. But if you know that, if in advance you know, okay, a kid is running towards my drone, I will just go maybe 10 meters high, then kid cannot jump that high, then it's safe. If you have to think and see, okay, maybe I should stop the engine, maybe I should land, maybe I should take height, you lose time. So in advance you need to know, what will I do, how will I react when something goes wrong? And there are several scenarios. It's actually a risk analysis that you have to do to know what to do when something threatens to go wrong. Point number 8. Always check the location where you are going to fly. Do I have the right to fly in here? Are there geographical zones? The European regulation define that, and it is not linked to the category in which you are flying. So it's not that you have zones that are only okay for a specific category and zones that are only okay for open category. You have geographical zones, and you have per zone to check, can I fly in here? In Belgium we have zones where it's not allowed to fly in the specific category, military areas, but it's allowed to fly in the open category only up to 10 meters. So that is something that's not an open area, that's not a specific area, that's an area that's only allowed up to 10 meters in the open area. Some areas are just not allowed at all at a certain moment. So in each European countries there are apps, there are websites that will let you know, is there here something specific? Is it a geographical zone with some restrictions? You have to check that. Sometimes it's an area where there are other persons, other aircraft using the airspace, and if you find yourself amongst 20 air balloons, well, it can become very dangerous. And when there is such a contest with 20 air balloons, they will define an area in which we do not have the right to fly. So Do check the geographical zone to be sure that you have the right to fly there. Some areas will also require you to ask for an extra authorization, so do check the geographical zones. Ninth point, registration and insurance. Now, this is not really safely flying, this is legally flying, but you have to know that except for very small aircraft, toy drones or drones under 250 grams that do not have a camera aboard, you need to register as an operator. So you need to register so that the authorities of your country know that you are flying with a drone. And in order to register as a drone operator, you actually need to have an insurance beforehand. So registration and insurance, that's a tip for the legality of the flight, not so much for the safety, but it's also important to fly legally. So that's point number 9. And then the last point of my 10 tips, tip number 10, that's also a tip for the legal flight. That is, do I have the right to film what I'm going to film? Are there people that might have a problem with the images that I'm taking? So think about the privacy. Do a privacy assessment of your flight. Am I going to take images of persons that I have no right to publish? Am I going to see things that I'm not allowed to see? And when you are flying close to people or when you're flying in an urban area, well, this can sometimes become a problem. So think about the privacy. Do not just take off and fly, but do an analysis of the area and see, can that be a problem for privacy? So these are the 10 tips for a safe flight and for a legal flight. I hope you learned a few things. I definitely can tell you that when I'm teaching that these tips are very, very much appreciated. These are very clear, concrete things. So please take that into account for your next flight. And I wish you very good flights.
Thank you, Laurent. And I appreciate it. And I've learned a lot, I think. But is it all, or is there more?
Well, actually, I have some more for you. I also give you the 10 commandments of the LiPo battery. Why the 10 commandments of the LiPo battery? Because the LiPo battery is actually potentially a dangerous battery. These are extremely efficient batteries. They are used in 99% of the drones, not to say 100% of the drones. And these are extremely efficient. The ratio between the power of a battery and the weight of a battery is one of the best that you can find. But there are two problems with lithium polymer batteries, LiPo batteries. The first one, if you use that in a way that is not the proper way to use a battery, it will very quickly become unusable. So you will have a battery that will not give you the power that it could give you when you use it correctly. And the second point is such a battery can explode, can actually create fire when you use that in a bad way. So here I give you the 10 commandments of the LiPo battery. The first commandment of the LiPo battery is actually have no fear of LiPo batteries. I'm just telling you it might explode, it might start a fire. I've been working with LiPo batteries and drones for more than 10 years. I have zero problem. I have zero incident because I know the 10 commandments and I do nothing wrong. So it's not when you look at the LiPo battery and you say, ooh, what an ugly LiPo battery, that it will explode. A LiPo battery will actually have a problem when you let it fall. So never transport 10 batteries like that and possibly let one fall. So when there is a shock. And a LiPo battery, that's the number 2. A LiPo battery will have a problem when you charge it using a wrong power. So always charge using the right power. And some batteries, I have here a few batteries. I have in my LiPo bag, I will talk about the LiPo bag in a moment. I have some very small batteries. These are the very small batteries that we use in our training drones. But I have here one of the two batteries that are used on the M210. And when you put those next to one another, you can obviously see a difference. Well, there is a difference in weight, but there is also a very important difference. This is a battery. You see the connector? You just plug that, and your charger is a charger that will only charge these batteries. There is lots of brains into the battery, electronics that will make sure that your battery will always load and be charged in the correct way. This is battery without any electronics. So you have the possibility to charge it using a wrong program if you do not do as you should. So when charging a smart battery, you will have normally no problems because the charger and the battery will make sure that everything is done correctly. But when charging such a battery, and it could actually be a big battery, but it's not a smart battery, you could actually choose the wrong program, and that is what becomes dangerous. So use the correct power to charge your battery. Commandment number 3, never empty too much. When you are flying, you are using the power of the battery, of course, and a LiPo battery that is too empty will become a battery that is not that stable, and so it will not give you as much power in the future when you go too far in a battery, but it also becomes unstable and so potentially dangerous. On most drones, you will always have a fail-safe. That is, at a certain moment, you will get a beep to say, hey, your battery is at a low power, low level, you have to come back. And even when you ignore the warning and you continue flying, at a certain moment, your drone will either do a return to home and come back home by itself, or it will land. It will land where it is to make sure that the battery doesn't become dangerous. So, sometimes it's better, and that's what happens when the drone makes an auto landing. It says, well, it's more safe to land where I am than to explode in the air. Well, I say it's more safe to land when I am sure that I'm not too low and where I know where I'm landing. So do not go too far in the battery. And that means that when you are flying, you have to control the level of battery. You have to regularly check your telemetry, check your screen to know what is the level of the battery. Commandment number 4, measure the current. Check that your cells are in balance. In the modern batteries, you will see that on your screen, and I will show you. I will turn the Mavic on. I'll just do that without propellers, of course, because it would be dangerous to do that with propellers. So I'll just turn my remote controller on. The app will follow. And then I will turn my drone on. And it's actually now doing its initialization. As I said, it's very important to do an initialization. But what I want to show you is when I am inside my drone, I can see here the details of my battery, and you can see here I have 4 cells, and the 4 cells are perfectly in balance. The 4 cells are at 429 volts. So this is a battery that's perfectly in balance, perfectly okay to use. When one of the cells is not okay, well, in here it will be very easy because it will not be green anymore. It will become orange or red. This is very easy. I just have to click on the battery icon and check that. But when you do not know that, well, you will not know that your battery actually is in balance. So check the battery, check that it's in balance. And when you have a drone that doesn't have a smart battery, then you have battery testers. And you have to plug the battery into the battery tester to check cell by cell that it's in balance. Very important, measure the current, control, check that your battery is in balance. Commandment number 5. Well, that is fairly easy, but never short circuit your battery. That is the best way to have a battery that will explode. Well, it shouldn't be a commandment. I mean, it's really easy to understand that it's not done with battery, but why is it a commandment? Well, there are some histories of persons that try some stupid things with batteries, and short-circuiting a battery is one of those. The next commandment, number 6, control the temperature. And you have 2 ways to do that. The first way is actually, I will get back to my app. And here you can see the temperature of my battery. That's 22.9 Celsius degrees. That is perfectly normal. Actually, this is about the environment temperature. So I'm now in a room with about 22 degrees. You see that it's going up because my drone, as we speak, is actually warming up and is bringing temperature of the battery at a higher level. Should I now, without having done any minutes of flight, have something like 40 degrees, then there is a problem with my battery. So, before the flight, your battery should be at environment temperature. Of course, a battery under 15 degrees, Celsius degrees, will not be efficient. So it needs to be at least 15 degrees. I'm not saying that you cannot fly under 15 degrees. I'm just saying that when you are flying under 15 degrees, well, you should heat your battery up. Some drones, the Mavic 2 Enterprise that I have here, it will actually warm the battery by itself. So when I have a battery that's at 12 degrees and I leave it for a few minutes, it will automatically warm the battery up. Not all drones have that, so when your drone doesn't do that, just put the battery in the car with the heating on, or just use warming elements that you can find, but make sure that your battery is above 15 degrees. Otherwise, it will not work correctly. The second thing is, before the flight, the battery should be at environment temperature. After the flight, it's normal that you have a battery that's warmer. It can easily become 40, 50 degrees Celsius. That is perfectly normal. It's not normal if your battery is 80 or 90 degrees. So you should also, after the flight, before you turn the engine off, check the battery on your screen, check the temperature on your screen. And when you see that it's normal, when it's about 40, 50 degrees, no problem. When it's above, then that would be a problem. And the last thing that I will do, when I finish my flight, I will turn my drone off, and I will take my battery and I will just feel how warm is my battery. Basic rule, if I cannot hold my battery like that, it's too hot. So when I will not do that because I don't want to let it fall. But when my battery is so warm that I cannot hold it in my hands, then there is a problem and I wouldn't fly it with this battery anymore. So very important, check the temperature of your battery. Commandment number 7. Do not tinker with your batteries. That is actually very easy to understand. Do not try and open a battery. I just said, well, there are several cells in a battery. I have a battery that I don't use anymore. Or let's open it to see the different cells. That's not done. That's very dangerous. So please use your battery in a correct way, in a safe way. Do not try to open it. Do not try to make your own battery from spare parts of old batteries. That would be very, very dangerous. So it's really a basis, but do not tinker with your batteries. Commandment number 8. Assess the lifespan correctly. And in order to do that, there are actually 2 tips that I can give you. Tip number 1, every battery that we have, we actually put a sticker with the date of the first use on it. So that's battery 78, and that's a battery from the 14th of January 2017. So we can follow the battery, we can know when we first used it, we can know how long we have been using that. And the second tip I can give you, number your batteries and write down in a logbook what battery has been used for what flight. It's not compulsory in the open category to have a logbook, but I would really advise to do that. And there are apps that will help you to automatically read the data from your flight and put them in your logbook. But please do number your batteries and check that. That will make the difference between, hey, I have flights of about 20-25 minutes with my drone, but sometimes it only flies 10 minutes and I have no idea why. What's the reason for only 10 minutes flight? Or I always have 20 to 25 minutes flight, except when using battery 3, where it only gives 10 minutes. Then it's very clear that battery 10 is not okay anymore. And I wouldn't fly with a battery that gives me only 10 minutes flight, when normally I should have 20 to 25. But when I do not identify my battery, when I do not have numbers, I will not know which battery is giving which time. So it's very important to check the lifetime of your battery, to write down what you have done, and the easiest way is to have a logbook. Tip number 9, we are almost done. Number 9, my battery has blown, what happens now? You have to know that one of the easiest way to see if a battery has a problem is strictly visually see that my battery is not okay. I have here 2 batteries of a Phantom 4. One is perfectly okay, one is not okay. Can you spot the difference? So as you can see, one of the batteries is not flat anymore. That's a blown up battery, and that's a battery that I do not want to use anymore. There is another very easy test. Not all batteries have that, but the Phantom 4 has a battery where actually you have between the cells, I will show you that, you have a ventilation, and here when I put it like that, we can see through the battery. So we can internally see that there is no problem. When I do that with the other battery, well, we do not see through it anymore, because there is also the different cells inside my battery are actually also blown up. So this is a battery that is not okay to use. And we do not see through it, and we see here that it's not flat anymore. So the question, of course, is now, okay, thank you, Laurent, I have seen that my battery is not usable anymore, but what do I do with the wrong battery? Well, the first thing is, do not just put it in the garbage bin and forget about it. That is the most dangerous thing. A battery that is in such a condition is a battery that is potentially dangerous. That is a battery that is very likely to catch fire or to explode. So you need to neutralize it. You need to make sure that it's not dangerous anymore. And there are different ways to do that. The best way, a bucket of water with salt, so salt water, a bucket of 10 liters water with a half a kilogram salt in that. And then when you put the battery in it, the chemical reaction that will happen will make sure that your battery is not dangerous anymore. Do not do that home into your kitchen, do that outside, and we have done that a lot. This battery, actually, I can use that, keep that in my hand without any problem, because it's not dangerous anymore. I wouldn't do what I'm doing now with a battery that is in such a condition without being certain that it has been actually neutralized, that it's not dangerous anymore. So that is the best way. What you can also do is to go to your reseller, the Specialized reseller, drone reseller. They have systems to make sure that a battery is not dangerous anymore, but do not put that in the normal garbage bin, because that would be very dangerous. So it has to be neutralized before you use that, before you throw that away. Do not use that anymore. Last tip, number 10, proper storage and transportation. As I told you, a LiPo battery can potentially be dangerous, can potentially catch fire, can potentially explode. We do not want that, so all the batteries that we use are stored, anyway, in a LiPo bag. This is a bag specially made for LiPo batteries, and the small batteries we keep in there, the big batteries we keep in there, the middle batteries we keep in there. So when a battery has a problem, and should the battery catch fire, the bag will not stop the battery from burning. That will not stop a fire, but it will make sure that it's contained into the lipo bag. So it will not catch fire, and it will not propagate the fire to my desk and to my house. It will just remain here. Lipo batteries that are burning, it's extremely violent, it's really hard, but it's very short. So when a battery catches fire in a lipo bag, mostly the damage will be contained in the lipo bag. And for extra safety, the lipo bags are always stored in metal boxes in our training facilities, so that should something happen, it will remain into the lipo bags and into the metal containers. And last thing, when you want to transport a battery in your car, always transport the battery separated from your drone in such a lipo bag. When you have a car accident, the shock could cause your battery to explode, and I want it then to stay in the lipo bag. When you want to transport in a battery into an aircraft, well, there are regulations, and you need to make sure that you have the right to do that. So check with your flight company, do I have the right to transport a battery? Anyway, you will never put the lipo battery in your big luggage in the airplane. You have to take that with you in the cabin luggage, and there are regulations regarding how many batteries you have the right to transport, and mostly it will also be compulsory to transport the batteries in lipo bags. So proper storage and transportation is also very important. And this was actually my 10th commandment. So we now have a better knowledge of how to properly work with a lipo battery. I will give you number 1 again. Have no fear for lipo batteries. If you respect the 10 commandments of the lipo battery, you should have no problem, but do respect them. So that was it. I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a great afternoon. Goodbye and safe flights.